As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Mickey Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into what happened to a set of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes when the Great Depression hit. Each episode has 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story. Section 2 goes deeper into the historical facts. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections. Story recap. The Stotesburys host holiday activities, but not at their closed estate. Running away from scandal, Barbara Hutton sails to the Orient. Now back to As the Money Burns. Party Crasher. A nearly homeless Supreme Hostess gets back to what she does best at a luxury hotel, and many don't want to miss out. Section 1, Story. Another official debutante season is over, but the frivolities continue. And the center of all these wintry activities is the Waldorf, the new, glorious, beautiful Waldorf-Astoria Hotel, which opened on Park Avenue on October 1931. The finest in grandeur and luxury all at one's fingertips. And now for something even more important. Entertainment. Coloratura soprano and Supreme Hostess Cobina Wright can hardly believe her luck. Right as she's being turned out onto the streets, then a wonderful offer from Lucius Boomer himself to not only work at what she does best, entertaining, but to have her own suite of rooms. The gratefulness can hardly be described. Her husband, the Silver Spoon, William May Wright, a.k.a. Bill, is still in the Rockies trying to revive their fortune. Cobina attempted to run her own supper club out of their Sutton Place home, though her place was packed every night with top-notch entertainers and elite guests, A-list all around. Cobina wasn't so good with the financial matters. And yet, if Cobina is throwing a party, everyone wants to attend. It's the one place the Blue Bloods can easily mingle with musical and silver screen stars. And at the Waldorf, one really never knows whom they might run into. In the mornings, Mafia boss Frank Costello gets his daily shave. In Waldorf Tower's room 39C, Mr. Charles Ross, alias for Charles Lucky Luciano, holds regular meetings and runs his racketeering business. President Hoover will soon become a long-term resident after the Lincoln Day dinner as he leaves his presidency. Still, Cobina misses Bill, and so does their child, blonde, curly-headed 10-year-old little Cobina Wright Jr. Cobina fears their daughter might be scarred by all the recent changes, so does her best to make this feel like an adventure. Thankfully, the Waldorf is more than accommodating, so little Cobina is allowed to keep baby ducks in her bathtub and baby chicks in her sitting room. School friends like Brenda Fraser and Diana Barrymore visit and play. With their private life a little more settled than hopping from friend to friend, Big Cobina is ready to make her mark in the world and show everyone what she has got. And yes, with so many fabulous new settings, Cobina cooks up what she might do next. There is the Sert room with those large, magnificent Grisal paintings by Josep Maria Sert, a Mdivani in-law by way of Princess Roussadana Roussie Mdivani Sert. Cobina could resume her regular Saturday night supper club and maybe have some dances there. Friday, January 20th, 1933. But for now, she must focus on this year's Beaux Arts Ball. This year's theme will be a grand tour. This year's donations will go to the Architects Emergency Relief Fund, as many have faced unemployment over the last year, as well as the more traditional educational work for the Institute. Patrons for the evening include Dowager Alice Vanderbilt, her daughter, artist Florence Vanderbilt Whitney, daughter-in-law Grace Wilson Vanderbilt, Mrs. Kermit Roosevelt, and Mrs. Joseph Urban, the set designer's wife. The main ballroom transforms into the lounging rooms of the Ile-de-France, the popular luxury French ocean liner. The cruise line provides original and authentic decorations. Guests can walk the gangplank in and out of the facility to the elevators or stairs. One of the special stowaways is none other than Prince Michael Romanoff, the celebrated pretender, nay, Harry Geguzin, and dubbed by the press as the Prince of Impostors. This infamous party crasher does everything he can not to miss his favorite ball, even if that means defying Ellis Island again. On this occasion, he has his own special invitation and designated role, only he does have trouble gaining entrance into the United States. This colorful rogue has been revolving in and out of Ellis Island lately. He arrives, gets detained, deported, only to report a few days later, all to happen again. New York newspapers celebrate each and every escapade of this ornament of the social world. A poor orphan pretending to be something bigger and all the while amusing those of the social set. His crimes are quickly forgiven by victims and authorities. Some might even claim he is a crime fighter, as the biggest crime in society is to be boring and/or bored. Something our supreme hostess is quite adept at solving, and thus her ongoing success despite financial turmoil. Saturday, January 28, 1933. On a more somber occasion in Paris, the funeral for former Gilded Age Society queen, Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, is held by her daughter, Consuelo Vanderbilt Balsan. Over in New York at the Waldorf-Astoria, Cobina's new Saturday night supper club opens to a great success and becomes the go-to Broadway hangout. Members-only elites from both society and entertainment gladly join each other in the Sert room. For the moment, admittance is only given to invited guests. But this is Cobina, and the list is long and comprehensive. Cobina's regulars like Beatrice Lilly, Fanny Bryce, Noel Coward, Cole Porter, and others are sure to sign up. According to one trustworthy observer, Bill shows up and applauds his wife's efforts. Only if that is true, Cobina never sees or hears from him. Wednesday, February 1st, 1933. The Charity Ball, the 75th annual event since its founding before the Civil War in 1856. Dinner is first served in the Jade Room, while other private dinners are held elsewhere. This year is more jazzed up with a Monte Carlo room in the West Foyer resembling a Mediterranean casino with stage money and a roulette table for gamblers. Debutantes are on hand to pass out boutonnieres. Smothering mother Henrietta Hartford is among the guests. Lots of swag and loot along with over 100 prizes, including the grand prize a cruise to the Spanish Main and another fine wristwatch, both of which are won by ladies from Tuxedo Park. Much money is raised for the New York Nursery and Children's Hospital. Radio broadcast of events begins at 11:45 p.m. For that and other events, all the finest show up and expected to be Cobina's other regulars, including Jessie Woolworth Donahue, Virginia Bertie Graham Fair Vanderbilt, Deems Taylor, Arturo Toscanini, Cecil Beaton, Mr. and Mrs. William Bill Paley, Mr. and Mrs. Bernard Baruch, Mr. and Mrs. J. Gould, and Cobina's former love, James H.R. Cromwell, a.k.a. Jimmy. Endless activities to line up. Dances tease the occasional ball. For winter, Cobina hosts roller skating in Central Park. In spring, under the right circumstances, she might even revive her famous circus ball. Yes, Cobina is back in the papers again, making all the headlines with her activities and parties. Only she sure would wish they'd leave off the part of her topsy-turvy fortune. It makes a fantastic headline, but a little less than fantastic reminder of her very real change in circumstances. The failure of her private club, coupled with the eviction from her Sutton Place duplex with its Italian furnishings. Then an even bigger bitter pill to swallow, the loss of her pink Casa Cobina home in Sands Point, Long Island. The truth is, the Waldorf provides Cobina and little Cobina enough for food and shelter, and maybe some tuition. Though they have chandeliers and oysters, there is little money left over, even to afford a newspaper. Any extras for needs or wants like the governess or clothing will have to be earned via independent concerts and other means. Still worse is the news that from New Mexico, Bill is openly living with a woman. Some say an artist model, a manicurist, or possibly his cousin. Does it really matter? Cobina can't be sure if the anonymous letters arriving come from pure spite. But the sinking feeling is that these rumors are more than true. Intrepid society reporter Nancy Randolph of the Daily News reminds her readers there is fortune ready to be made for anyone who could keep the 400 from yawning into oblivion. Will our downtrodden hostess be able to fake her way until a more lucrative success arrives? Will the pauper turn back into a millionaire? Section 2, History and Historiography. Human history is repeatedly filled with all sorts of recurring trends and situations. One of those are pretenders, especially those pretending to be royalty. The yarns they spin of their glorious escapades and hardships. Yet this grift can have two starkly different side effects: turmoil in a bid to seize power, or pure amusement and delight. Of course, there is the need to siphon money out of certain marks, maybe for pure greed, or just the want of a better life. Certain circumstances yield a plethora of these pretenders appearing en masse, such as the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution, the sudden overthrow of monarchy and an old tiered system. Plenty of royals and aristocrats are left destitute and at times without records, thus hard to prove or disprove claims. There seems some plausibility, and sure enough, if one plays the part well with a certain panache and flair, then others might be more than generous and willingly play along. Russia has always had more than its fair share of pretenders to the throne. The early and untimely death of Romanov Tsar Peter III, grandson of Peter the Great and husband of Catherine the Great, resulted in 4 pretenders alone in Russia and a 5th outside. They probably should have paid attention that Peter III was deposed in 1762 in favor of his wife, Catherine the Great, and dies during imprisonment. The official death is ruled from colic or stroke, while many suspect assassination. Widow and successor, Catherine is not likely to respect anyone's claims, even denying later their own son, Paul's, rise to the throne. Here's a quick rundown for a few of those pretenders during this period. Stefan Mali, a.k.a. Stephen the Little, hints he is the dead Tsar and unites Montenegro as its only Tsar from 1768 to 1773. A Russian delegate visits, exposes him as a fraud, imprisons him, then releases and restores him to power as he is considered the best of the potential rulers. Crippled in 1771 and dead by 1773, Stefan is found in his monastery bedroom with a slit throat, possibly by a Greek servant recruited by the concerned Ottomans. In 1770s Paris, Catherine faces another rival challenger, the beautiful and refined pretender Princess Vladimir or Princess Augusta Tarkanova, who claims to be the illegitimate daughter of Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter the Great and aunt to Peter III. Duped into going to Russia to be restored to the throne, the princess is imprisoned in St. Petersburg and refuses to give up her true identity, and so dies in her cell in 1775. However, those fates do not deter those wanting power, or at least to depose a female monarch. The most famous pretender is Cossack Yemelyan Pugachev. In 1774, Catherine's forces crushed the Pugachev rebellion. Pugachev is beheaded and dismembered in 1775, Moscow. A more bizarre pretender, Kondraty Selivanov, claims to be both Jesus and Peter III. Kondraty is also a member of the Skotsi sect, a strange religious group which castrates members. In Imperial Russia, Kondraty is imprisoned for convincing 13 peasants to undergo the procedure. And after his release, he finds his way to Moscow in 1795 and a meeting with the now Tsar Paul I, who decides the man is insane and has him committed to a madhouse. Released in 1802, Kondraty lives the next 18 years receiving double homage as Tsar and Christ. By the way, kind of hard to believe, but that group, sect, the Skopsy sect, is documented as still existing in the 20th century by Leon Trotsky in 1913. The numbers are in the 100,000s in the early 1900s, but reduced to only a few thousand by 1929. 2 other separate accounts, one male and another female, describe meeting horse-drawn cabbies and members of the sect in 1930s Bucharest, Romania. In the USSR, the sect lasts until 1947, but mostly disappears by the 1970s. By the 1990s, Latvia may have had the few only surviving communities, but that information comes from controversial reports. Now, those above are pretenders during the imperial glory days of the Russian Empire. Most end up imprisoned and or executed or dead by one manner or another. But such is the fate of those seeking power with their fraud. By the 1920s, it might be considered a little more than precarious, as the Bolsheviks are intent on eradicating any claims that might restore a monarchy. Remember, Prince Serge Obolensky spent a few years evading assassination attempts. Serge himself once encounters his own pretender, a smaller, bookish man hard to confuse with the elegant and suave manners of the tall and regal true Serge. Regardless, the 1920s saw a flurry of such claimants, and it is considered acceptable if the possible pretender gives a good and amusing show. The most famous pretender is Polish immigrant Franciszka Szonskowska, aka Anna Anderson, who claims to be Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanoff. Then there are plenty of real-life potential actual claimants to the throne, such as Grand Duke Kirill Vladimirovich. Both have been covered in a previous episode. It is quite dangerous to be a pretender wanting power, so much less so if wanting only social payoffs like fame or luxury. The title hunters of some mean might suffice to marry a title without the requisite purse or property to go with it. And lastly, we have the downright con artists, those trying to make a buck off their supposed titles. As for all these exiles or so-called exiles, the need for power is supplanted with a pure desire for luxury. These type of spongers and freeloaders are aplenty, royal or not. Now enters Prince Michael Dmitri Alexandrovich Obolensky-Romanov. Here we use the double F variation of Romanov, as presented in the news articles, as well as his later business to be discussed. In 1932, The New Yorker features a 5-article series detailing Prince Michael's exploits in fraud and deportation. The series states, he convinces a fairly large public that a good imposter is preferable to the average prince. New York society finds it far more acceptable that a man could become a Romanov by his efforts at age 30, and not merely by the accident of birth. His actual origin story is part of his mystique. Born in Lithuania in 1890, Hershel Geguzin migrates to America by age 10. His name is changed to Harry Gergeson and sometimes Ferguson. Orphaned and shipped by train to the Midwest, primarily Hillsborough, Illinois, he lives in at least 6 orphanages where he learns the art of presenting a delightful and appeasing nature to get adopted. Often adopted by wealthy or well-to-do parents, he eventually wears out his welcome with less appealing behaviors. Somehow this tradition will continue until he is age 35 because it seems 40s becomes less charming for adoption. At age 19, he heads off to England and adopts a British accent and mannerisms. Like many pretenders and cons, he adopts a few personas until sticking to a few choice roles. Before the prince, he also goes by Count Gladstone, William Wellington, and Arthur Wesley. Prince Michael is an expert forger. He not only forges his friend, painter, illustrator, and writer Rockwell Kent's signature on a few checks, but poses as him on book tours. Ironically, Prince Michael's impersonating Kent at book signing leads to a spike in regional sales during that period, and later gets him an illustrating job. In one luggage left behind, there's found at least 17 different identities with stationery and other papers for at-will uses and performances. The pretender even travels with a canine who goes by several names such as Sport or Michael to complete the image. Always befriending millionaires willing to pay for his education, he might be the only person to attend Eton, Oxford, Cambridge, Heidelberg, Princeton, Yale, and Harvard. Several attempts have been made to prove or disprove his attendance to mixed results. Ditto when meeting with Russians, despite claiming to be fluent in 6 languages, he only ever speaks in English. He makes the round in Paris, where he adopts the Prince Michael persona, and back in the U.S. to New York, Boston, Newport, Long Island, the upper crust along the Hudson, Los Angeles, and a dozen or so American cities. He serves as a Russian advisor on several Hollywood productions. He interacts with everyone. Supposedly at Oxford, he even befriends David, as in Prince David, Prince of Wales, and later plays that association off in a Canadian con. Another perpetual feigned association is with George Eastman. While a Harvard engineering student, Prince Michael meets future Count Henri de Castellane, future husband of Sylvia de Rivas de Castellane, close friend of Barbara Hutton and former lover of Prince Alexis Mdivani. In 1925, Prince Michael is invited to attend a Newport party for Mr. and Mrs. Reginald Vanderbilt, as in Gloria Vanderbilt's parents. In the Hudson community, the well-known impostor is not warmly favored by the real Russian prince, Serge Obolensky. Prior to his glory days, he once worked as a button maker, a tailor, and more notably, a pants presser, but only briefly performed such duties as to appear legitimate to escape a situation. Another hustle, Prince Michael helps sell objects d'art and or old masters' paintings. In that capacity, he occasionally helps merchants make sales, then at other times swindles and takes the whole profits. The prince relentlessly passes a string of bad checks in New York, London, Paris, and Los Angeles. He even gets caught passing bad checks to a tailor in France. In New York's Tombs, he befriends inmates and guards alike. Despite being a prisoner, the Tombs runs like his own imperial palace. He scoffs at any encouragement to turn to more legitimate means like becoming a writer. He is a repeat visitor to Ellis Island, where numerous attempts are to arrest and deport him. He escapes a few times, then returns inevitably. His American citizenship claims under Harry Geguzin are not fully proven, and the bad political tensions with Bolshevik-run Russia means the inability to deport. So every once in a while, he's granted access back into the land of the free. Prince Michael notably books passage or at other times stows away on many fine luxury liners, including the Olympe and Ile-de-France. Recently, in 1932, he stows away on the latter while also making public appearances, secretly skipping through unoccupied rooms and even staying at the dog kennel. He later claims in the Havre that he went to see a friend off, then fell asleep only to awaken when they were far out to sea. For that offense, the prince spends 2 months in jail, then does more time for stealing an American passport, before going back to his grifts. C'est la vie. He would swing from luxury hotels and caviar to starvation and sleeping on the streets, with intermittent brief stays in hospitals and multiple jails. Pauper to prince to pauper to pauper prince. The one event he is dead set on attending as much as possible is the Beaux Arts Ball, always securing a ticket or slipping into the event. In January 1927, he collapses from the effects of starvation. The day after that January's ball, he again is set to participate in 1933, even despite troubles with Ellis Island, as recently as January 1933. Eventually, he makes his way back. His exploits gain continuous press coverage, especially as New Yorkers delight in the somewhat mildly criminal behavior. Yes, he is committing crimes, mainly conning the wealthy who then pay or forgive him later. He is not a gangster or involved in more dangerous and violent crimes. However, he is recruited in 1931 by a wealthy man to set up and frame his wife for adultery to secure a divorce. When the prince's colorful rap sheet is brought out in court, the case is dismissed, and the wife then sues her to-be ex-husband and the prince for damages. However, he comes off as so likable, he often charms his way out of the consequences of his actions. Wealthy friends pay off debts, victims forgive or waive the debts or disappear conveniently, allowing those cases to be dismissed. As for those intent on catching or prosecuting him, often end up helping him or giving him more lenient sentences, or otherwise face public ridicule and embarrassment. Eventually, behaving more legitimately, Romanoff will go on to live in Los Angeles and establish a popular and successful restaurant, Romanoff, on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills from 1941 to 1962. The famous side-eyed photo of Jane Mansfield and Sophia Loren is taken here in 1957. Popular dishes include beef stroganoff on noodle, referred as noodles Romanoff, Waldorf salad, tomatoes stuffed with crab, frog legs, eggs Benedict, filet mignon, chocolate soufflés, and strawberries Rand Marnier, or strawberries American style. He will die in 1971 at age 81 from a heart attack. The only thing he ever wanted was to live a life more exciting than the one given to him by birth. He succeeded in abundance. In one article for the 1933 Beaux Arts Ball, Prince Michael is compared to another, possibly the first famous party crasher, James One-Eyed Connolly, a former American boxer who lost an eye in a fight, then became a celebrated party crasher of mostly sporting games and matches, and later some political conventions for over 40 years, coming up with all sorts of ruses and disguises, as he is quite easy to spot. Funny, isn't it, how an actual imposter never suffers from imposter syndrome, as they are more than willing and quite motivated by obtaining the heavily desired perks. They even seem to enjoy the perks more than those who earn them the hard way. Section 3. Contemporary and Personal Relevance. A fun element of this intertwining and interweaving story is not only how so many people meet and intersect within the story, but the ripple outwards to other places and other times. Well, it was really important to be seen and occasionally heard depending on the circumstances. Whether media past or present, they appear over and over and over again. One listener was watching the movie Weekend in Havana and saw a tall, beautiful blonde who looked similar to Doris Duke in a minor role. To his surprise later, he learns the actress is none other than Cobina Wright Jr. Yes, our regular, periodic, and random characters are bound to show up anywhere. It's sort of that Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, or frequency illusion, which is once you become aware of something, then you tend to notice it more often and in places you previously had not seen it before. And sure enough, the world of the elites is a very small world indeed. William Bill Paley's later second wife, Bay Paley, is one of Truman Capote's swans, thus to be featured in the current FX's Feud Season 2, Capote vs. the Swans. The story takes place when Capote pisses off his society ladies by revealing far too much in a too-thin veneer of their personal lives in his novel Answered Prayers in 1975. In the limited series, Bay Paley is portrayed by Naomi Watts, and William Bill Paley is portrayed by Treat Williams. The novel mentions Princess Margaret, Prince Charles, and a grown Gloria Vanderbilt, who in our story is a little girl and companion to little Cobina Wright Jr. We will have to see if any of those appear in cameos, but so far not listed in primary or secondary roles. By the way, the Hulu series, The Great, features the reign of Catherine the Great, who is portrayed by Elle Fanning. Her errant husband, Peter III, is played by Nicholas Hoult, a character who has lived longer on TV than in real life. The series is entertaining, but less than historically accurate. Still, it would be interesting if they added some of the Pretender storylines. You never know when our heirs and heiresses and other random visitors will appear past or present. It seems to be that they are indeed everywhere. Let's play a game. As you might have noticed by now, I love teasing and name-dropping all sorts of different people who randomly appear in our story. I would love to hear your observations, experiences, and catches through any of the social media channels for As the Money Burns. Make a good and amusing one. I will gladly mention it in an episode. If you enjoy As the Money Burns, then please share, like, and subscribe. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns, Valentine celebrations abound, but questions remain as to where single heiresses might be found. Until then, As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com. Please come visit us at As the Money Burns via GoodPods X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, now Meta, or Instagram. Transcript, timeline, episode guide, and character bios are available at asthemoneyburns.com.